Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. Stick around for an offer that will get you 70% off a 3-year plan with 1 extra month free. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. Producing that last video analysing every mission in Hitman 2 felt like a fairly Herculean task, bringing closure to this thing hanging over me with people constantly requesting a follow-up to a video I made back in 2017. I finally get it done after spending months playing each level countless times and writing and rewriting my thoughts over and over again, all in service of providing my final stance on all the missions available in Hitman 2, only for them to announce and subsequently release one of 2 DLC maps a week before I was set to publish the video. And what's more, they are incredibly interesting maps in their own right, so it's not like I'm not going to do a further follow-up video on them. This is never going to end, is it? In all seriousness, it speaks to just how weird a thing Hitman 2 actually is. Here's the unlikely sequel to a game that was such a disappointment sales-wise that it was dropped by its publisher, with said sequel also failing to meet sales expectations as the team simply couldn't find a release model that worked. And yet, despite the multiple struggles on both a development and publisher level to get this game out the door, the team's output over at IO Interactive has only been improving as time goes on. They really seem to show no signs of slowing down, with a further sequel apparently well underway. But for the moment, we have 2 maps that offer genuinely intriguing possibilities for whatever future the series has, both in terms of gameplay and, of all things, storytelling. And by storytelling, I don't mean the transition from still images to full-blown, full-motion cutscenes bookending each mission here. As always, the overarching story behind everything is delightfully hokey, and the idea that a game can now straight up change the way it tells its story over time is kind of inherently wild to me, but I can't help but feel that something gets lost in the transition here. I don't know, it's easy to look at still images and immediately assume that it was only this way due to budgetary constraints, that no one would ever choose to tell a story like this if they could fully animate it, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. There's something painterly to the way those stills were composed. Limiting scenes to a single shot meant that every shot could get more attention, with bright, vibrant colours, charmingly contrasting the stylish, stark imagery with the B-movie cartoon villainy they actually depict. So no, it's not the broad changes in storytelling style I find particularly impressive here, especially considering it's a story that leaves almost nothing in the way of closure from the setup of the main game. What did impress me occurred almost immediately upon entering the Milton Fitzpatrick Bank, with the goal of eliminating its manager fresh in 47's mind. Immediately taking a left turn from the downright palatial main lobby, sneaking past security, I found myself in a distinctly unimpressive grey corridor, the guards relegated to a pokey wee box for their break room, and it was here that I noticed the blink and you'll miss it dartboard with a picture of the very same manager I'd been sent to eliminate. Turns out, these guards hate her specifically as much as anyone else. Of course, these little details about disgruntled workers have been part of many levels across these games, but rarely has the contrast between the target and those tasked with protecting them felt as subtle or cohesive in a narrative sense. Indeed, the structure of the bank makes it so that every step forward, every new section uncovered, feels like a gradual step further into the belly of this particularly insidious beast. There are multiple options as to how you progress through the level, but almost all of these centralise on the manager's office on the top floor, meaning that regardless of how you wish to tackle the objective, you'll find yourself experiencing some kind of progression from the lobby's opulence through the cramped and sometimes dingy quarters of the various service workers tucked away from the public eye up to the inner sanctum. Here, smiling faces act as a smokescreen, hiding this borderline war zone of a stock exchange, where visibly dishevelled bankers speak to each other as if they were trapped behind enemy lines, desperately shuffling between stacks of disorganised papers like sandbags in the trenches. The series has always flirted with themes of greed and inequality. You know, there's a reason almost everyone you go after is absurdly rich, but by setting a level in a bank, it gives the developers and writers a chance to dive headfirst into exploring the potentially dangerous power of wealth, directly juxtaposing the cutthroat nature of the money business, in that the ominous tones with which you hear these people discussing the fragility of their jobs often sound like a life or death situation, with the quite literal cutthroat nature of your business. In terms of the map itself, it's the puzzle box level design as seen in the Paris Mansion from 2016's game, where your main goal is to work your way up through a central structure, except each playthrough of the map to me has felt like the unveiling of a fairly prescribed narrative. Rather than simply peppering an environment with little world-building tidbits here and there, this feels like level design as storytelling, and I really don't think I've seen a map as coherent in how it conveys its themes to the player as the bank. What's most impressive, however, is the sheer variety of gameplay options available to you at every turn here, despite a design that feels relatively linear from the outset. Thanks to the inclusion of a secondary objective where you have to retrieve data from various individuals wandering different parts of the bank before exiting, your job isn't simply done when you eliminate your target. Given that this is a bank, a rather well populated one at that, getting the 3 targets alone and escaping unnoticed has proven to be one of the more consistently difficult challenges presented in these more recent Hitman games for me. Fortunately for some, a further option is available as things potentially move from Full Metal Wall Street to Heat, forcing you to solve the puzzle of getting the bank vault open and hijacking the main data core yourself. However, my excitement at the prospect of escaping a dangerous heist, carrying an illegal object in broad daylight, was dampened somewhat by the discovery that this data core can be stored in a briefcase. I'm not asking for some complicated crowd control mechanics in this instance. The tension of being instantly noticed for choosing the less complicated option here would have been enough, but instead, once you access that room, you may as well have completed the level, exiting entirely without event. Rather than having to think up multiple different approaches to eliminate each target separately, the heist approach feels like selecting easy mode to a certain extent. That said, there are changes made to pre-existing systems here that manage to give you more control over how you experience a level without the need for too much technical upheaval. Stealing the disguise of a job interviewee, for example, aside from providing one of the most overtly comedic mission stories in Hitman 2, has subtle implications for the rest of your mission here. My first time through, it was late, and I didn't realise the stunningly easy solution to the question staring me in my bleary-eyed face. I didn't get the job, and so I was only allowed to wander to a certain point, whereas completing the mission story gives you full access to the upper floors. It's a simple puzzle to be sure, but I like the idea that what was once a pretty cut-and-dry system, this disguise will get you into these set areas, is now more flexible, with disguise privileges changing based on how you interact with certain characters or scenarios. So there's a lot to the bank. It tells its story in a way few other maps can match and offers incredibly varied gameplay to boot, with certain approaches leading to some of the most tense scenarios throughout Hitman as a whole, with some playthroughs lasting upwards of an hour. And after all of that, I'm tired. I think it's time for a break. With that in mind, let's join 47 in the second of the 2 DLC maps as he heads to the highly secluded island resort of Haven. Far from the storm-ravaged rock that closed out the base game, the island 47 and Lucas head to in order to eliminate the owners and gain access to information on the Providence partners is seemingly a paradise. And much like the leisurely vibe given off as you set foot on the beach, Haven is arguably less focused than the puzzle box design of the bank map. It's not necessarily a problem, however. Instead, Haven is probably best described as a scaled-down version of the Columbia map, with several distinct locations placed across its sizable landmass, each with their own purpose and challenges. Again, this is a map whose disparate targets see even speedy playthroughs take substantially longer than most other environments, for me at least. It's kind of the best of both worlds, however, with a story that, similar to the bank, directly engages with the misdeeds of the powerful, the idea that they can just buy their way out of trouble and live it up in the process, while also allowing you to commit various misdeeds yourself, luxuriating in your surroundings as you go. It really feels like the conclusion to Hitman 2, a holiday for 47 even, a relaxing if violent bookend as a reward of sorts for enduring the tension of prior maps. It's hard to really say much of note about it honestly, because the scenarios it does provide you seem to draw pretty heavily from environments discussed in the prior videos. It's just a really good, aesthetically pleasing version of those maps. It does seem to go against what I so loved about my favourite maps from the base game, however. The idea that you could affect things on one end of the map from the complete opposite point doesn't really line up with how closed off the mansion is compared to the other areas here, for instance. But there's just something I really like about Haven as a level. I think it's the sheer amount of strange detail lying just under the surface here. In a way, and this might sound odd, but bear with me, it reminds me of a final unlockable level in a Tony Hawk game. That weird offshoot level where you go to space or unlock a Kiss concert or something. The amount of crazy stuff you can just happen across while poking and prodding around the island goes beyond anything I can remember from the base game, and is maybe the thing that has encouraged me to keep coming back here. I simply simply need to uncover all of this island's secrets. But it's not just the comedic little Easter eggs either though. For the longest time, I didn't even realise, for example, that there was a massive underground lab beneath the mansion. Multiple early playthroughs saw me miss it entirely until I eventually stumbled into the bookcase concealing it completely by chance. And this isn't some throwaway little feature here, it's as detailed as any of the underground labs under the many mansions to be found in Hitman. IO Interactive just seems to be at a point where they don't feel the need to draw your attention to it. It's a level of care I can really respect. They spend what I can only presume is a whole lot of time and resources creating this huge, detailed environment that most players might never even see. All in, this seems like the kind of end-of-season blowout that, if they hadn't basically confirmed a sequel to be in development, I would actually read as a fairly grim omen for the future of the series. Everything about it seems to suggest a kind of, well, what have we got to lose mentality. Instead, thankfully, it just reads as a real show of confidence from a team that seems immensely comfortable in their abilities and willing to take risks on a franchise they absolutely believe in. I'm so glad Hitman has a future at IO, because within these maps you can really see the incredible potential for where the series could go from here, in terms of how its systems could evolve to provide more varied challenges, how level design can tell a story, and so on. All from a developer clearly working at their absolute prime. And speaking of being at your absolute prime, make sure your browsing experience is the best it can be with today's sponsor, NordVPN. Say you're traveling and you want to access content from your home country, or you live in a country where the government censors which sites you can and can't access. With NordVPN, you can solve all these problems by connecting to one of thousands of servers in over 60 countries. With the help of NordVPN's lightweight and user-friendly Chrome browser, Android and iOS apps, all with unlimited bandwidth and up to 6 simultaneous connections, you can fully control your browsing experience wherever you are. And right now you can get 70% off a 3-year plan plus 1 additional month for free when you go to nordvpn.com/writing or use code WRITING at checkout. This special offer makes your subscription just $3.49 a month, is entirely risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee, and really helps the channel to boot. A massive thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring the video, and I really hope you enjoyed this further piece on Hitman 2. I'd like to sincerely thank my patrons for making videos like this possible. I legitimately could not continue to do this without your generous support. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more, perhaps consider pledging at patreon.com/writingongames. Even $1 or $2 helps more than you know. Special thanks go to Mark B. Writing, Artyom Vitsyuk, Leah Chinello, Konstantinos Sakinis, Henry Milek, Edward Clayton Andrews, Hebe Amori, Rob, Bryce Snyder, Tommy Carver Chaplin, David Björk, Lucas, Dallas Keane, William Fielder, my dad, Timothy Jones, The Nameless Guy, Ham Megas, Samuel Pickens, Shardfire, Anna Pimentel, Jesse Ryan, Justin Holderness, and Charlie Ann. And with that, this has been another episode of Writing on Games. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.